Bad Batch Season 2 premiered with its first 2 episodes as the newest Star Wars entry after Tales of the Jedi. And while Tales of the Jedi managed to reignite some of my interest in the franchise, the return of the Bad Batch was fairly unremarkable, promising a return to the cookie-cutter formula from Season 1. I'll do a quick explainer of the Bad Batch and a recap of Season 1 for those who have yet to see the series. Clone Force 99 were 4 clones genetically altered by the Kaminoans to enhance desirable traits, effectively turning them into super soldiers. The genetic experimentation altered their appearances and gave each a unique specialty. The leader, Hunter, had enhanced senses, including the ability to sense the electromagnetic fields of droids. Crosshair, who had incredibly keen eyesight as well as excellent marksman skills. Tech, the resident genius who had enhanced intelligence, and Wrecker, the muscle, whose enhancements affected his size and muscular structure. Their abilities and unorthodox methods made them an incredibly effective Special Forces unit during the Clone Wars. Because they were genetically different from the rest of the clones, which they called Regs, their brethren viewed them as defective, naming them the Bad Batch. Towards the war's end, the Bad Batch would help rescue former ARC Trooper Echo from a Separatist base. Because Echo had been experimented on by the Separatists and turned into a cyborg, he felt he fit in better with Clone Force 99 and joined the team. Season 1 of the Bad Batch started with the group witnessing the effect of Order 66, watching their clone brethren cut down the Jedi, themselves unaffected by the programming due to their genetic mutations. This intro to the series was amazing and recalled the tension and suspense from the finale of the Clone Wars. After the Jedi have been killed and the Separatists defeated, seemingly all clones are recalled to Kamino to learn about their place in the new Galactic Empire. Admiral Tarkin arrives to assess the value of the clone army to see if it would be more efficient to have a cheaper and more loyal force defending the Empire. After disobeying orders to eliminate what Clone Force 99 was told were Separatist holdovers, instead they turned out to be Saw Gerrera's insurgent group. Saw Gerrera having been introduced as one of the leaders of an anti-separatist rebel group on the planet Onderon, a group that had been secretly trained and armed by the former Republic. Saw Gerrera also grows up to become an extremist within the rebellion, first seen in the film Rogue One. The Bad Batch is imprisoned but escapes with Omega, a young clone who is genetically different than the Regs in that she is the only other clone besides Boba who is a perfect genetic match to Jango Fett, though obviously she is a female. Her similarity to Boba includes the fact that she ages at a standard rate. These differences lead her to feel a sense of kinship with the Bad Batch and escapes Kamino with them. Unfortunately, they leave behind one of their own, Crosshair, whose natural resistance to the inhibitor chip was weakest, and which was erased after the Kaminoans amplified the signal of his chip, turning him into a devoted servant of the Empire. That all happened just in the first episode of Season 1. The show became pretty episodic afterwards, though several plot lines were going on simultaneously. Obviously, the main overarching story involved the young Omega becoming ingratiated into Clone Force 99, but also trying to become a regular kid after living a sheltered existence on Kamino. In an episode that saw Hunter try to give Omega a better life by sending her to live with Cut, a deserter clone who had left the Republic after the first battle of Geonosis and had started a family of his own, though Omega ultimately chose to stay with the Bad Batch. And this wouldn't be the last time we see a return of characters from other Star Wars series. Captain Rex would find the Bad Batch in an episode that saw him warn the team about the dangers of the inhibitor chips and lead them to an abandoned Jedi cruiser to remove them. We also get an episode with not one but 2 bounty hunters, Fennec Shand, who apparently doesn't age and we saw in The Mandalorian, and Cad Bane, sporting a metal plate on his head, resulting from an injury he received during a shootout between himself and Boba Fett that occurred in an unaired episode of the Clone Wars. Both of these bounty hunters were hired by separate Kaminoans to capture Omega. Cad Bane was hired by Lama Su, the Prime Minister of Kamino, who wanted to use Omega's genetic material to make stronger clones so that the Kaminoans could keep their retainer with the Empire. This was part of the ongoing plot involving Admiral Rampart, a human officer who wishes to see the clones replaced by an army made entirely of human conscripts. Fennec Shand was hired by Kaminoan Chief Medical Scientist Nala Se, who may have more personal reasons for wanting Omega back. Another episode returns the audience to the planet Ryloth, where we again see the character Cham Syndulla, who led a rebellion against the Separatists during the Clone Wars. We also see his daughter Hera, who would grow up to pilot the Ghost in Star Wars Rebels. By far my favorite cameo in the series would be Gregor, a former clone commando who gets captured while trying to desert, leading the Bad Batch to bail him out. In this same episode, Lieutenant Admiral Rampart orders Prime Minister Lama Su to be put to death, and Nala Se is taken to be part of what I believe to be the precursor to the cloning labs that we know to lead to the cloning of Emperor Palpatine. During most of the season, Clone Force 99 acts as mercenaries for Sid, a Trandoshan who deals on the black market. All these different storylines culminate in the finale, where the Bad Batch returns to Kamino, only to watch their former home, Tipoca City, be destroyed by the Empire. Though the team escapes with their lives, they fail a second time at trying to convince Crosshair to rejoin the team. Though I'm not sure what happens to him afterwards, as Admiral Rampart seems to believe that the Bad Batch died on Kamino. I know it wasn't the shortest recap, but I wanted to be thorough. So now you know who the Bad Batch is, who Omega is, why the Kaminoans were after her, and that the Empire is in the process of phasing out clone troopers. And if you watch the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, then we know how that ends. I won't differentiate between Season 2, Episodes 1 and 2 because it's the same plot that stretches over 2 episodes. The Bad Batch is on a mission for Sid, which is inconsequential outside of the fact that Omega overhears a conversation between Echo and Hunter, in which Echo complains to Hunter that instead of making money so that they can hide, they should be using money to help fight the Empire, and that the only reason that they are fugitives acting as mercenaries is because of Omega. And he isn't wrong. Although they weren't on board with what the Empire was doing initially, the Bad Batch wasn't in any trouble until they met Omega, who aroused suspicion towards the Empire. And when they escaped captivity, they took the Kaminoans' prized gene supply, so they were being hunted by Crosshair and his squad of Imperial troopers and had to contend with bounty hunters sent to capture Omega. Once they return to Sid, she reveals that she has another mission, possibly the last, depending on what they bring back. All they need to do is collect a chest of treasure. Any chest of treasure among a large horde, and they will have paid off their debt to her and earned their freedom. This treasure will be found on the planet Sereno, the former home of the late Count Dooku, Sith Lord and leader of the Separatist Alliance. So the Bad Batch agrees to take the mission and heads to Sereno. The Bad Batch arrives on Sereno to find the Empire has bombarded the capital city and an Imperial unit is confiscating the entirety of Dooku's war chest. The Bad Batch splits into 2 teams to acquire some of the treasure, but things go wrong almost immediately. Hunter and Wrecker get into a firefight with clone troopers, and Tech, Echo, and Omega find themselves trapped in a cargo container attached to a transport ship heading into space. Because Hunter and Tech have been making Omega memorize Imperial ships, she figures out how to detach the cargo container with its booster rockets, theoretically allowing them to land. Except that they crash land, with the container hanging precariously over a cliff. Tech fractures a bone in his leg after a box drops onto him, and an enemy patrol is hunting the group. While Hunter and Wrecker lead the main clone force on a merry chase through the ruins of the capital city so that they can make it back to their ship, Echo, Tech, and Omega run into what seems to be the sole survivor of the bombardment, who shelters them, albeit at gunpoint. This guy tries to teach Omega that there is more to life than making money and that she should enjoy the little things and seek happiness. Even though she ignores this advice for most of the episode, the survivor's hospitality is rewarded when Tech helps him restore one of the last remaining collections of his people's culture. Meanwhile, Omega is trying hard to get some of the treasure despite Echo's warnings, with Omega explaining that she needs to get some of the treasure so that the Bad Batch's life will be easier, revealing that she overheard what Echo said to Hunter. The two more or less reconcile, with Echo telling Omega that she has to let it go, and that her safety is more important. And this happens just in time because Hunter and Wrecker show up with the ship and they escape the planet. But they do so without even a scrap of treasure. The episode ends with Lieutenant Admiral Rampart's arrival on Sereno, and him killing the clone captain in charge after hearing his report about the resurgence of the believed to be deceased Clone Force 99, as evidence of their continued existence undermines his goal of creating an entirely conscripted Imperial army. 2 quick things to note about these episodes. 1, the amount of time that takes place between seasons 1 and 2 isn't stated, but Omega has grown her hair out, and the team is far more trusting of her abilities, so I think we can assume that it's been at least a few months. Also, they repainted certain parts of their armor, which personally I hate. There isn't a reason given as to what the significance of the color change is. Not like when the 501st Legion painted markings on their armor in honor of Ahsoka Tano's return at the end of the Clone Wars. I'm also disappointed that despite Hunter and Wrecker entering Dooku's palace, we weren't given any new information about Dooku's origins, family history, or any Sith artifacts that he may have had in his possession. For those of you who don't know, Count wasn't just a title given to Dooku to make him sound more evil. It was hereditary. He was born into the noble house of Dooku of Sereno, and reclaimed his inheritance after leaving the Jedi Order. There is definitely some lost potential in these episodes. Not a lot happened to further the plot of the series. While the more significant implications of Omega being the only perfect clone of Jango Fett other than Boba have been touched upon, that plotline, as well as the episodic nature of the series and the plotline of Omega becoming closer to the Bad Batch, makes this series all too similar to The Mandalorian. However, it is hard to tell if Omega is more or less helpless than Grogu. But what's certain is that fans have been denied a series that could have been reminiscent of Republic Commando in favor of one resembling the film Three Men and a Little Lady. Unless you're a completionist who feels compelled to consume every bit of Star Wars content, it's hard to recommend the series, but hopefully it gets better. Let me know what you guys think about The Bad Batch in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button and that notification bell so you never miss out on a new video. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.